Welcome to the Avail podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, and today we'll sit down with Bobby Bogard to discuss what he's learned in over 45 years of ministry. From serving at the senior level in churches to becoming the executive director for Linked International Network of Churches to becoming an author of 2 books, Bobby's experiences provide a wealth of wisdom. If you're interested in discovering how to approach ministry from a generational perspective, stay with us because you're not going to want to miss this episode. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Avail podcast. This is where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. I'm excited to get into today's conversation. You guys probably noticed that I'm always excited because we have amazing guests here on the Avail podcast. We have pastors, leaders, global leaders, national leaders, local leaders that are making a difference in so many ways. And today is not going to disappoint on this podcast. For all of you Avail listeners and Avail viewers, today we are with Pastor Bobby Bogard. We're talking about a man who's been in ministry for over 45 years. He has been in senior executive roles and positions at amazing churches like Resurrection Life Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan, also Gateway Church in Southlake, Texas. I love this man because he not only does he exude leadership, but he has a father's heart. His life's calling is to be a father to the fatherless, and he loves approaching ministry from a generational perspective. Pastor Bobby, it's so good to have you here on the Avail podcast. How you feeling?
Hey, Virgil, doing great. So excited about being here today and being a part and maybe just helping a leader here and there, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we're excited about life and excited about what is happening throughout the kingdom of God, man. So,
yeah, well, here on the Avail podcast, everything Avail, our heart really is to help ministry leaders, church leaders, pastors, just to help equip them with practical leadership resources and content and advice that's going to help them on the journey. And I know that you're going to do that today with us. So I'm excited to get into this conversation. Before I ask you some questions about your book, Essentials, Bridging the Leadership Gap, before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I want everybody from Avail to just get to know who is Bobby Bogard.
Yeah. Well, I was raised in a non-Christian home, and my junior year in high school, my mom was in a marriage, and my stepdad's twin brother pastored a little church called Gospel Mission Church in Des Arc, Arkansas. And that's where Jesus Christ found me. And my life was radically transformed. We went to Bible school, Christ for the Nations in Dallas, met my beautiful Rose of Texas there. And so we began to do life ministry. We were in about 13 years of youth ministry. And then we had the opportunity to plant a church in Shreveport, Louisiana area. We did that for about 4 years. We went on staff at Christ for the Nations as a faculty member, kind of helped them build their youth ministry department, launch a thing called Youth for the Nations, which is a summer kind of youth camp thing. And then we served here in Michigan for about 13 years as the executive pastor for Resurrection Life Church. Found ourselves transitioning back to Texas for about 12 years with Gateway Church, served on their senior and executive teams there, helped them launch their network of churches. And then about 4 years ago, we were contacted by Res Life if we would come back up and kind of be the executive director of Linked International Network of Churches. And that's what we're doing. Plus, we also have our Bogard Group Ministries, where we help with strategic planning. We help coaching, things of that nature, where we're trying to help pastors and leaders and churches succeed. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. We're having fun doing it. Got a family. I got to mention my family. Got a family, great kids, 3 grandsons. And so I have a daughter and son-in-law in Dallas, and then my son, daughter-in-law, and 3 grandsons are here with us in Michigan. So get to watch the boys play football and a few things like that.
That's great. Well, I've really loved getting to know you and seeing how the Lord uses you in ministry. Been able to go to a few of the Link conferences and events, and what a blessing that is to so many pastors and churches that just find that community, find some resourcing, and just find some connections. I want to talk about your book, Bobby, Essentials: Bridging the Leadership Gap. Can you talk to us a little bit about why did you write this book, and like the heart behind it, and why Bridging the Leadership Gap?
Okay. Yeah, I think, throughout the years I've been in ministry, of course, you start young in ministry and you're trying to cut your teeth and you're trying to make your mark and, do all that God's put in your heart to do. And you run with zeal and you run with, fervency. Then you begin to age a little bit and get a little bit more seasoned. And, in both arenas, there are challenges and there are opportunities that I think that we have to be cognizant of and aware of. And so, I've sat down with a lot of young leaders and I've sat down with some older leaders, and in conversations, be able to unearth some things maybe that were hidden, or maybe talk about some things that brought on new opportunities in their lives and things of that nature. And so I wrote the book in a sense of, I wrote it from the standpoint of I'm in Starbucks with a leader sitting across the table from me, and we're having a conversation. And that's kind of the style of the book. It's not it's almost a workbook. It's a, study guide. It's a team manual. So it has all kinds of applications to it.
I like it. I do like how you, in the book, you kind of, you gear some advice towards that emerging leader, right? Young leader, or that leader who's kind of beginning to get their feet wet. You also speak to the established leader. And there's a few things that I was reading in one of the chapters, and I wanted to see if you can maybe give me a little bit of insight. The first one is emerging leaders, and it says, find something to do and do it. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Having been a faculty member at Christ for the Nations, at one point, I'm not saying this is the motif or the model, but we had a lot of students that would graduate and they were, quote, waiting on God. And they're probably still in alumni housing waiting on God, So what I've found in my life, in my experience, that when, the Bible says, put your hands to the work and do everything that you do heartily as unto the Lord, and just work, and He'll bless the work of your hands. But if your hands aren't at work, He's not going to be able to have an opportunity to bless you. And so a lot of young leaders, I think, especially in this emerging generation that we have right now, it's like there's an entitlement attitude that, hey, I don't need to do the work in order to get the position. I qualify for the position just because of who I am. And I just think you're a whole lot more successful when you find something to do, you do it. And as people observe you doing it, they gain the character, they see your skills, and you just have a whole lot more opportunity for people to help you get to that next season of your life.
That's good advice. You also say to the emerging leader, listen before you speak. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I think as young leaders, we always have an opinion, and sometimes we don't realize the full context of the season that maybe the organization's in that we've joined. And I remember coming into an organization, and I was seeing some things that I thought, they needed to change. And I'm young buck in ministry, so I write out all this stuff and submit it, and it's like, hey, get to the back of the bus. So I think a young leader needs to listen and learn. I mean, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So all of us need to listen more, for sure. But as a young leader, I think it's wise to set listen, absorb, gather information. And then as you approach the conversation, you can do it in a manner where you honor, you respect, and you have a scope of what the context really is. You don't understand the history of the organization, the pain points that the organization has walked through, the stress levels that the leaders have carried. And you're coming in fresh, right out of Bible school or wherever you're coming from, and you just need to listen before you speak.
Yeah, this is good. I love this. And for all the young leaders out there, all the emerging leaders out there, this doesn't mean, because I know you, Pastor Bobby, and I know that you are actually a leader who believes in young leaders and emerging leaders. And this is not so much about, oh, young leaders, you have nothing to say. It's about understanding your place, kind of your position. And you kind of earn that. Like you earn your voice as you're doing it. As you're helping push forward the mission and the vision of the organization, you begin to gain that voice. But sometimes when we're young, we're so impulsive and we want to just say, and sometimes when we speak too much, we get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And, the flip side of that is that as an established leader, I need to be aware of the giftings and talents that God is putting into the organization.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, the future of our organization are the young leaders that we have coming into the pipeline. And so, as an emerging leader, I need to put myself in a coaching position rather than a critiquing position.
That's good.
And what makes the difference is if I see that young leader and mine out, my goal is to mine out their potential. And help them discover the breadth and the depth of what God is doing in their life and what God can do with their life. But if I just look at them as filling a position, you're my youth pastor, and I never take time to help that youth pastor develop his people skills, his communication skills, how to interact with parents. If I never spend time, then what happens is something emerges in whether it's conflict or some type of, event that breaks down, then I come in and I critique him. And I critique him based on performance, not on calling. Does that make sense? And so I think as a young leader, the reason you want to position yourself, like we've said, doing, listening, serving, that's the heart of Jesus. That's number one in leadership is servant leadership. Christian leadership is servant leadership. So learning to serve, learning to come under. But then as an established leader, I want to be sure that I'm mining out and grooming that next generation, because there is a day that I'm going to have to pass the torch.
I love this conversation for a lot of reasons, Pastor Bob, because I think there's leaders on both sides of this, of this gap. And when we're able, what I've seen is when organizations and leaders are able to bridge this gap, like you talk about in your book, some major momentum can build. Now, in one of the chapters, you specifically talk, I think it's chapter 2, lanes and plateaus. You talk about how important it is for leaders to find their sweet spot. Now I know that for a lot of people, I know there's people that are beyond, they never found their sweet spot. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, about the importance of finding your sweet spot?
Yeah. Years ago, I was sitting in a car dealership's office, and we were purchasing a car. And there was a picture on the wall, and it had this cross section of fences, and it had a cow in each pasture. And like the cow in this pasture had its head over eating the grass out of this pasture, and the cow in this one had its head over eating over here. So every cow was eating out of the other pasture rather than eating out of their own grass, in their own space. And that reminds me so much of the reason it's important for us to find our lane is because one of the biggest challenges I think that we face in leadership and ministry is comparison. And we're always looking at what's on the other side, what's somebody else doing, what, if I was in that role. And man, if you do that, I've done that at times, and the stress level, and the self-awareness of who you are, I mean, it just diminishes. But when you find that sweet spot, there's several things that happen. Number one is you're able to be fulfilled, and you're able to minister in confidence. It's like every man's gift makes room for him. Okay. So if I'm running in my lane, I know that God is going to make room for my gift. Okay? So I want to bring the best me that I can possibly be into the organization that I'm serving. Okay. The second thing that does is it minimizes my comparison, so that now I'm confident to allow other people to come alongside of me. And I'm more confident to come alongside of them and serve together as a team. And as a team, we can accomplish a whole lot more than if everybody's trying to do what everybody else is trying to do. Does that make sense?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So that's why I really encourage, people to find their sweet spot. And, how do you do that? That's a good question. Now, how do you find your sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
I think there's, if I could just maybe divert here for a second, a couple of things I'd recommend. Number one is have people in your life that can help you understand who you are. Okay. Someone that is willing to speak truth in love and help you see your blind spots. The second thing is, there's a lot of great profile tests out there, and I think they're great, and I think we should use them and utilize them. The only qualm I have there is sometimes they become the law of who I am, rather than, the Holy Spirit can make corrections in my life and adjust my strengths and weaknesses. But know kind of who God's made you to be. Understand, whether you have a communication gift or an administrative gift, and value what God has put in your life. So understand what your skill sets are. Look at your experiences, because God puts you in different experiences to shape some of the qualities of your life. Okay. So what are my experiences? And then thirdly, what are the common doors that get opened up to me for opportunity? What are those common doors? If I'm thinking I'm this big speaker, but nobody ever invites me to speak, I might want to get a clue, right?
Yes.
I don't know. That's 2 cents there.
I like that. Well, the reason I like that is because I think it's possible, Bobby, for people to live a long time and not find their sweet spot, or to live a long time, as you were saying, with comparison, and try to be in someone else's sweet spot, but it's not really theirs. A sweet spot is not something you force. It should be something that comes naturally. And that's so important. I want to,
hey, before we leave that, let me recommend a good book.
Yeah.
Craig Rochelle years ago wrote a book called Kazon, and it's just a great book on how to find your lane and how to live in it. So I'd recommend that book.
That's a good recommendation. So chapter 3 is entitled Relationships and Attitudes in your book, Essentials. Okay. You mentioned that a developing leader eventually has to make a choice, solo or squad. Can you talk to us about some of the distinctions between going solo, going squad?
Okay. I think every successful leader understands that the relationships, Maxwell teaches this, the relationships, those closest to you will make you or break you. So relationship is so important, who you allow into your life. And then attitude, how you approach the opportunities given to you. So relationships and attitude they're significant into what I call team building. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a God dream, I guarantee you it's bigger than who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So as an individual, if I jump into my God dream and I just have this attitude that I'm going to do it all, I can do it all, then my mindset leads me down, my attitude leads me down this road of solo ministry. Therefore, I'm capped by my own skill sets. I'm capped by my own resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm capped by the relationships, the minimal amount of relationships that I have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to run solo in ministry, I'm capping the God dream and I'm locking it into who I am and the capacity that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I choose the squad is about the team, about the people that come alongside of me and I come alongside of. And the relationships have to be full of trust. You have to build a platform of trust in order for a team to really function well. And so relational capacity has to be developed and maintained and sustained throughout the course of walking together. But the squad it increases opportunity for us to do God's dream in a much broader scale with a broader success, because what happens is we're no longer capped. Because all we have to do is, if we get to a plateau, we just have to find the right relationship who brings the right skill sets into the team, and then our team can emerge above that plateau and we can do more. And so the squad is always the best choice for leaders to make. And that takes a sense of security, and it takes work. Relationships are work. You have to manage tension. You have to manage conflict, things of that nature. But it's so much worth bringing the team on board and the work that it takes to build that and sustain it than it is to just go solo.
Yeah. I think there's always the temptation, especially when you're starting out, if you're starting out or if you're planning, there's so much you feel like you have to do. And the God honest truth is you have to do a lot. You have to do almost everything at the beginning. But the key is not staying there, like understanding, wait, there are people with different gift sets. There are people that are more wired for this and that. They're actually going to do better than me. And so understanding that, I think, is important. The famous words, I forgot who said it, but if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, bring people with you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the heart of that, and really good advice. You mentioned right now, as you were talking about a squad, you mentioned about, tensions and conflict. That's another thing you talk about in the book, about how, growing leaders have to learn how to manage tensions. And then you actually make a statement, which is kind of like, it's kind of one of those statements not everybody wants to amen, but saying that conflict is actually a good thing. Can you go a little bit into that? Because I know a lot of people think conflict. No, I don't want conflict. Tension, conflict. Talk to us a little bit about
that. Okay. I think of the scripture, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And when you get two, you think about it in marriage. When you get two people in the room, there is going to be, at some point and juncture, conflict that arises. There's going to be some tension that arises because you're going to see things from a different point of view. Okay. Now, a lot of leadership teaching addresses this. A lot of times they'll talk about a team meeting, and they'll say, a good leader will create tension in the room. That we don't want to just go in there and, have everybody salute and come in line and amen the leader's suggestion. We need some people that will push back. And so tension in the room and conflict, I call it conflict because it is. It's a conflict between opposing ideas and, opposing strategies, how to get something done. There's not just one right way to get everything done. There's a lot of different ways you can get things done. So when you have the tension and you have the conflict in the room, then what emerges is the best solution. Okay. What emerges in the conversation is the best strategy. Okay. And what emerges in the room is team unity, because everybody's had a voice. Everybody's had an opportunity to buy in to whatever we're going for and tackling. So now, when you have conflict where there's offenses that take place, everybody's going to be offended at some point. I've been offended. You've been offended. And offenses are not necessarily bad things, because when you get offended, you start thinking about, either what they did wrong or what you did wrong, what happened to me. And it starts this reflection, a process of reflection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so out of the conflict, if I'm committed to the team and I'm committed to a spirit of unity, the conflict will always bring us to a place where we resolve the conflict, whether it's, through mediation or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that we can overcome all conflict, because even Paul and Barnabas didn't overcome the conflict with John Mark, right? But what we do know is that later on, Mark comes back and joins Paul's team. So I wonder what happened in Mark's life through that whole scenario of working through the conflict and rejoining Paul's team and becoming a great team member. So
I love that. And I've learned this on my journey. I think my team sometimes gets scared of me, because I've actually learned to actually like bringing in tension appropriately, to cause the team to think farther, to cause all of us to get out of our comfort sometimes. And so I think great things happen. That's great advice for leadership. I wanted to mention something caught my attention. There's a chapter called Discipline and Lifestyle. And you make a strong statement right at the beginning of this chapter. And you say, every emerging leader must master these 4 disciplines: finances, time management, health, and growth. Now, obviously, we don't have time to unpack all of these in detail, but why are these 4 so key?
Well, I think we all know the stories of people that embezzled money. We all know the story of people that have, been deceived. They walk in deception, and the breakdown. Those 4 areas right there are key areas where the enemy has come in and destroyed a lot of leaders, a lot of teams. And so I just think it's imperative that, especially as an established leader, I talk about this in the book, as an established leader, I've got some history. I've got some experiences in all of these areas. And it is imperative that I sat down with my young leaders and I talk to them about budgets. I talk to them about how to interact with the opposite sex. It's imperative, because if I don't help them find the right foundation, then the enemy at some point and juncture is going to really come in and steal. What I would recommend in any organization is what we call relational oversight. And that is to have one-on-one meetings where, sometimes even the majority of your meeting is more about the discipleship of the individual than it is about the, productivity of the individual. And so as an established leader, I need to be committed to my emerging leaders to help them grow in these areas. Because again, who needs another story, about these things going haywire?
Yeah, one thing I really appreciate about you and in the relationship and the friendship that we've had is you always ask me questions, and I can tell that you're thinking about my health. And this is important, right? Because I think that's one of the, especially high capacity leaders, we can really get going, we can get running and kind of forget to think about, is this a healthy choice? And I think a lot of leaders are feeling that pain of sacrificing health.
Well, coming out of 2020, the emotional health of a lot of our leaders and pastors have really been stretched. And to be honest with you, some of our guys have made it and some guys haven't. Some marriages have made it and some marriages haven't, because of the pressure that COVID and all the 2020 stuff put on our lives. And it's just sad to me. And it's not that I'm perfect in any of these areas, but I just know that walking through ministry in 45 years, I've seen some good friends hit the dust. And, a lot of these principles, a lot of these things could have been avoided had they been walking in the right principles. Principles before purpose. If I have the right principles in my life, I can fulfill my purpose. But if I go after my purpose without the principles being established, then I put myself at jeopardy.
I love this. The reason I love this is because I think these types of things can affect leaders at all stages and in all ages and in all size organizations. And when you have the right voices in your corner and you have people that are caring for you, that's why you talk about the importance of that. And then those established leaders that have fallen in some of those, potholes and have ran into some of those walls, and you really have a voice to speak into those emerging younger leaders who haven't been there, and you can help them. I think there's something powerful in that. Something caught my attention in your book. One of the chapters caught my attention, Pastor Bobby, because you have a chapter entitled F words. So you stress that it is essential for emerging leaders to avoid these F words. Can you share a few of these F words with us?
When I titled that chapter, I had to laugh. I thought, at least on Kindle, somebody might read that chapter, the F words, especially in a Christian book, right? Well, you think about the F words, failure. Every one of us have to learn to deal with failure. We're going to fail at some point. And I love, Maxwell's book about failing forward. Failure is not fatal if we embrace failure for what the purposes that it can serve in my life. So failure is number one. Fatigue is another one. We just talked about that a little bit. I think, running at the right pace emotionally, physically, running at the right pace spiritually. I mean, we want to charge hell, with a water pistol kind of thing. And a lot of times we run out of steam, and I've seen fatigue set in and really hurt and harm a lot of leaders because they haven't run at the right pace.
Right.
Now you have to understand what that is. We don't put that in there so that you're lazy. No, we want to work hard.
Yeah.
We want to work smart so that we're not fatigued, because when we become fatigued, we make bad decisions. Choices. And then the third one is fear. Fear, as leaders, there's always this aspect of, can we do this? Are we going to be successful? And sometimes, you're looking at the finances, you're looking at the growth, you're looking at all these different aspects of stress that come your way. And if you're not careful, you can be fearful, and a fearful leader is a fatal leader. And then the last one, I talk about fraud, and that is when I've failed or I've been fatigued or, I'm living in fear. A lot of times I become a fraud. And by that, I mean, I'm looking to cover up those areas of weakness in my life. And if I'm not careful, the enemy uses that cover up to start a seedbed of things that will cause me to fall. And that's, we don't want any leader to fall. And so I address those things. Everything that we're talking about, I mean, in each chapter, we're giving practical advice.
Yeah, it's good.
How to step into these things, manage these things. And so at the end of every chapter 2, we're trying to give a life example, and then we try to give you some action items to take on. So, yeah.
I like it because at the end of every chapter it has the little section called Making It Real, where it's kind of like a life application here. And then it has questions, some action items for emerging leaders, some action items for established leaders, and then, some highlights from the chapter. This is a really great book. Leaders, you want to get a hold of this book, Essentials, Bridging the Leadership Gap by Pastor Bobby Bogard. I have one more question, Pastor Bobby, before I go to maybe some random quick answers that I want to get from you. And I really appreciate you taking the time with us here on the Avail podcast, because I think your experience in leadership and your love for the Lord and your love for leaders really is apparent. I've seen it. And the question is, you talk about it in the book as well. The who, you have that chapter, the who in your life is critical. How does a person, how does an emerging leader who says, okay, Bobby says in his book, the who in my life is critical. How do you choose the right mentor? How do you find the right coach? How do you make that connection? How do you know who would be a good fit?
Yeah. Okay. So the who comes in many forms. The who could come in the form of a book, an author. The who in my life, John Maxwell's been a who in my life. Even though I've only met John a couple times, he wouldn't know me if we met on the street. He might, because he's got that type of mind, but, he can remember a lot of people. But, so the who in my life at a distance is someone like a John Maxwell. But then I need the who in my life that is, like you said, a mentor or coach. And really, I think God brings those to us. We just have to recognize them. And we have to recognize when that person's in the room, I want to pay attention. I want to observe. I want to listen. I want to watch how they manage things. So that can be a coach. That could be a teacher. That could be, a boss. It could be a pastor. So that person, they're closer proximity to me than the book. Okay. But they may not be relational. The relational capacity is not to where I can ask them some pretty straightforward questions. So then the way that I begin to pull those in is as I'm having conversations, I can feel this kind of affinity. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll ask people to go out for coffee, go to lunch, and see how the relationship develops. You can't just walk up to someone and say, hey, will you be my mentor? Well, let's see if I can be your mentor. Let's have coffee. Let's have lunch. Let's hear your story. Let you hear my story. Let's see if we're the right fit. And so you go after the relationship, not from the aspect of, hey, would you be my coach? But, hey, would you have coffee with me? Can I hear your story? Can I learn what happened? And then I think you'll get that relationship, and that's more the mentor coach. And then the last who in your life, I think every one of us needs one or two people. Paul probably, I think Paul's an example. He had, Timothy, he had Titus, he had Luke. There was a few people that were close in proximity to him. He had John, that laid on his, his shoulder or whatever, the beloved disciple. So there's that one person, one or two people that you have a relationship with that you can set across the table. They can look you in the eye and they can hear the depths of your heart, the depths of your soul. And you got to have a who like that you can unpack anything with. And those are going to be few and far between. But man, you ought to mine them out, in every season of life. It may be a different person, but in every season of life, there's a who that you need in your life that can know everything about you. So
love that. Love that. That's a good word. And I think that's a good encouragement. We all need some who's in our lives. This has been great, Pastor Bob. But before we tell people a little bit where they can find you and where they can get the book, I'd like to just throw out a couple of questions. Just kind of get your first impulse. Kind of might be a word or just a sentence, but just real quick. When you think about leaders right now, what excites you?
What excites me about leaders right now is I'm seeing a generation of young leaders that are hungry.
All right. Hungry. All right. When you think about leaders right now, what makes you laugh?
What makes me laugh? Some of the social media stuff makes me laugh.
Okay. Gotcha. We'll leave it there. And then when you think about leaders right now, and you only had one topic that young leaders need today, one topic that they really need.
Authenticity.
All right. Authenticity. And then when you think about leaders today, what we talked about makes you laugh, what makes you excited, what they need, what makes you cry, what breaks your heart?
Man. I wish you hadn't asked me that. What breaks my heart is that I'm seeing older leaders hang on too long. And it breaks my heart because there's two things that are happening. One is the older leader is depriving himself of moving into the stage of a sage, because they fear if they let go, they don't know what that future holds. Whether it's income, whether it's something to do. And then the second thing, what they're doing is they're holding back the next generation of leader that needs to emerge to be the voice for this generation. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and
totally.
That breaks my heart because I'm 66 and there's a lot of people my age. I mean, I still got a lot of fire in my bones, but I have to understand that, hey, I'm in a season where I need to be passing the baton. I need to be moving into a stage in my life where I'm willing to pour out myself and not necessarily have the position or the preaching, whatever. I want to give my life for the next generation. I think that's something that's always moved me. In every season of my life, I've always been a generational leader. I'm leading up and I'm leading down. And
good.
So I just feel like we need that kind of perspective. So
that's so good. That's so good. Pastor Bobby Bogard, where can people connect with you, learn more about you, your ministry, and maybe even get the book?
If you go to bogardgroup.com, bogardgroup.com, you can email me at Bobby, Bobby, at bogardgroup.com.
That's good. That's good. I know on Instagram, it's Bobby_Bogard. Facebook, it's Robert Bobby Bogard. If anybody is, those of you who like to connect with leaders on social media, Bogard Group.
We have a YouTube, Bogard Group Media. On YouTube, we have some teachings and stuff we have on there. So
that's great.
Love to help any way we can.
This is the book, everybody. It is Essentials, Bridging the Leadership Gap. Pastor Bobby Bogard and his heart to really connect that gap between emerging leaders and established leaders. Before we close off with some final thoughts, Bobby, I wanted to mention the Avail Journal. Have you had a chance to hold one in your hand? What do you think of the Avail Journal?
I get it every month. I love reading through the articles. It's a great resource for everybody.
Yeah, I want to let everybody know out there, if you haven't done so, you can claim your free annual subscription for the Avail Journal. 1 year will be on us. We would want to put this in your hands because if you're a leader and you're in ministry, or if you're a pastor, or even in the marketplace, There's so much practical, relevant leadership content. And it's just it just feels good. It looks good. You feel bad throwing it away. So you're going to want some Avail journals in your life. availjournal.com. Get your free annual subscription. Just you could put there, Virgil from Avail told me I can come here and claim your free annual subscription. Pastor Bobby, this has been a great conversation. Can you just maybe close off with a final, just from your heart, final thought you want to leave on everybody's hearts?
I think, we're seeing a lot of stress in our culture. There's a real adversity toward the church. And I just feel like, if we look at it from the negative side, we're going to miss the opportunity that's being created. There's a vacuum that's being created. And I'm excited because I'm seeing a lot of churches move more into evangelism, move into impacting culture, impacting and serving communities. And I think it's an opportunity for the church, much like back when I was brought into the kingdom. We were right on the heels of the Jesus People movement and the charismatic movement. And I just think there's an opportunity for the wind of the Holy Spirit to bring revival to our nation like there's never been before. So
that's a good word. I like that. Pastor Bobby, we on the Avail team, on behalf of Dr. Sam Chand, Martijn Van Tilborg, the whole Avail team, myself, we're so thankful for your life. We honor you. Thank you for leading well and for being such a blessing.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, everybody, we hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Pastor Bobby Bogard. The book is Essentials, Bridging the Leadership Gap. The website is bogardgroup.com. You can get more information on Pastor Bobby and his book. And remember, here at Avail, we just want to put practical, relevant leadership resources and content in your hands and in your heart so we can all get better at the art of leadership. We'll catch you next time here on the Avail Podcast. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Avail Podcast. We hope you've been challenged by this conversation with Bobby Bogard. Remember, you can connect with Bobby by going to bogardgroup.com and link.community. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. And make sure to claim your free annual subscription of the Avail Journal at availjournal.com. If you'd like to connect to our growing leadership community on Facebook, visit availleadershipconnect.com. As always, I'm your Avail media host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn about the art of leadership here at the Avail Podcast.